The day my wife disappeared was the day I learned our whole life together was a lie. She wasn't the sweet, delicate woman who could never open a pickle jar. She was a devil dancing on a razor's edge. And to pull her back from the abyss, I had to become something crazier than her. Ava, where are you? Text me back. I stared at my phone, the screen lighting up and dying over and over. The last message on the screen was from 12:03 p.m. It was from me, leaving work soon. Wanted to pick you up? No reply. I called 5 times. Each time, the same cold, automated voice echoed in my ear. The person you are trying to reach is unavailable. I sat in my office chair, a phantom hand squeezing my heart, tightening its grip with each passing minute. Anxious energy coiled in my gut. My deskmate, Leo, rolled his chair over, bumping my arm with his elbow. Dude, that look on your face, he snickered. Classic my wife isn't picking up, and now I'm spiraling vibe. Textbook. I shot him a look, in no mood for jokes. I lit up my phone again. Beneath her familiar profile picture, the message thread was terrifyingly empty. Doesn't she usually text back instantly? Leo's voice dropped, sensing something was actually wrong. Yeah, I said, my throat tight and dry. Her phone is practically glued to her hand. Ava and I have been married for a year. She was a freelance illustrator, working from home most of the time. She was wonderfully clingy. No matter what I sent her, even just a stupid sticker, she'd reply within seconds. She once told me she never wanted me to feel alone, not even for a moment. But now it had been 5 hours. 5 hours. 300 minutes. 18,000 seconds. It was like she just vanished off the face of the earth. The office air conditioning was blasting, but a film of cold sweat broke out across my back. Horrible thoughts, ugly and unwelcome, started bubbling up from the dark corners of my mind. A car accident? Did she get mugged? Or I couldn't let myself finish the thought. I shot up from my chair, grabbing my jacket and car keys from the backrest. I can't wait. I have to go home and check on her. Leo blinked. It's not even 5 yet. What about the boss? I don't care. I strode out of the office, hearing Leo's worried voice trail after me. Call me if you need anything. I waved a hand over my shoulder without looking back and jabbed the elevator button. Down in the parking garage, I practically sprinted to my car, my hands shaking so badly it took me 3 tries to unlock the door. The moment the engine roared to life, I slammed my foot on the gas, peeling out of the parking spot like a bat out of hell. I'd driven this route home 1,000 times, but it had never felt so agonizingly long. Every red light felt like a personal form of torture. Finally, the car screeched to a halt in front of our apartment building. I didn't even wait for the elevator, bursting through the door to the stairwell and taking the steps 2 at a time, all the way up to the 16th floor. Our front door was silent. The hallway was still. My fingers trembled as I punched in the keypad code. Beep, beep, beep. Correct password. The door clicked open. The living room was dark, veiled in the late afternoon gloom. It was so quiet, I could practically hear the dust settling. There was no smell of dinner cooking, no sign of her curled up on the couch watching TV, no familiar, "Honey, you're home." Nothing. My heart plummeted into my stomach. Ava. I called out, my voice shaking. No answer. I bolted into the bedroom. Empty. The studio. Empty. The kitchen, the bathroom. I checked every single corner of our apartment. She wasn't there. The person I loved more than anything in the world was gone. I collapsed onto the sofa, my body feeling heavy and useless. I scanned the cold, empty space that was supposed to be our home. My eyes finally landed on the shoe rack by the door. Her white canvas sneakers, the ones she'd worn when she left this morning, were sitting there, perfectly placed. But her other favorite pairs, the ones she wore all the time, were there too. A thought, colder and sharper than the others, sliced through my panic. Did she even leave the apartment today? My blood ran cold. I scrambled over to the shoe rack and started pulling out every pair of shoes, a frantic energy seizing me. 1 pair, 2, 3. Heels, running shoes, leather flats. All of Ava's shoes were here. Every single pair. She never bought shoes she didn't wear. Each one was a favorite. How could a woman leave the house without any shoes on? I forced myself to breathe, my mind racing. She was always saying how forgetful she was, so we kept a suitcase in the walk-in closet, specifically for last-minute work trips. If she really had to leave town for a freelance gig, like she'd vaguely hinted at in a text last night, that suitcase would be gone. I practically fell into the closet. The moment I pushed the door open, my breath caught in my throat. The silver 24-inch suitcase was standing right there in the corner, with a thin, undisturbed layer of dust on top. She hadn't gone on a trip. She had lied to me. The realization was a shard of ice driving straight into my heart. Why? Why would she lie to me? I slid down the wall, my body slumping onto the cold floor. A montage of sweet moments flashed through my mind. Her, curled up in my arms, looking up at me and smiling. Ethan, you're my whole world. Her, handing me a bowl of hot soup when I got home late from work, her voice laced with concern. You have to eat. No more skipping dinner. Her, pretending to be mad because I couldn't peel an apple in one continuous strip, pouting until I kissed her. How could that sweet, laughing, utterly dependent woman lie to me? I didn't believe it. I wouldn't believe it. There had to be a reason, something I didn't know. I pushed myself up from the floor and began to pace like a caged animal. I had to find a clue. She must have left something behind. My eyes swept over every inch of our apartment, searching for anything out of place. Finally, I stopped in her studio. This was her sanctuary. She could spend an entire day in here, lost in her art. Her desk was just as I'd seen it this morning. A half-finished illustration lay on the drawing board, the paint still wet, her favorite brush resting beside it. Everything looked normal. Wait, no, something was off. I leaned in closer. Ava had this little habit, a mild case of OCD, where she'd clip her paper to the board at all four corners to keep it perfectly still. But now, the clip on the bottom left corner was shifted, maybe half an inch, and the paper beneath it was raised in a tiny, almost imperceptible curve. My heart skipped a beat. I carefully, delicately pinched the clip between my fingers and lifted it. Tucked underneath wasn't just paper. It was a tiny black flash drive, no bigger than my thumbnail. It was the most generic, brandless drive you could buy on Amazon. But I knew, with absolute certainty, this was no accident. Ava's obsessive neatness would never allow for a mistake like this. She left this for me. On purpose. I snatched the drive, my palms slick with nervous sweat. I rushed to her computer and plugged it in. A window popped up on the screen. Please enter password. I froze. A password? What would it be? Our anniversary? My birthday? Her birthday? I tried them all. Each one flashed incorrect password. I leaned back in the chair, a wave of dizziness washing over me. The key was right in front of me, and I couldn't unlock it. What was I supposed to do? I raked my hands through my hair, my eyes darting around the room, desperate for a hint, a clue, anything. My gaze settled on the wall. Hanging there was a painting, the first birthday gift she ever gave me. It was a vast, brilliant night sky. She'd told me I was the brightest star in her life. In the bottom right corner, there was a small signature. Not her name, Ava. It was a strange symbol, like a stylized S or maybe a coiled snake. I'd asked her about it once, and she just smiled and said it was her special mark. Now, I could see that the same symbol was faintly scratched, almost invisibly, onto the plastic casing of the flash drive. This was it. This was the key. But how could a symbol be a password? I stared at it, my mind spinning. Suddenly, it hit me like a lightning bolt. A memory surfaced. One night, when Ava had a little too much wine, she'd curled up against me and whispered secrets in my ear. She told me she'd been a lonely kid with no friends, so she invented her own secret language, a code that only she understood. And she said the key to the code was hidden in her favorite poem. That poem. I shot up and rushed to the bookshelf. I remembered the book. It had to be here. I tore through the shelves, my hands frantic. Stray Birds. It was her favorite collection of poetry, a worn paperback she'd read so many times the edges were soft and frayed. My hands trembled as I flipped through the pages. She'd made light pencil marks next to the lines she loved. Finally, I found it. The one she'd recited to me that drunken night. I believe that we're like seagulls. We fly over the sea to find each other. This was it. But how did it relate to the password? I stared at the verse, then back at the S-shaped symbol on the screen. Seagulls. C. S. Was it the S from sea or seagull? No, too simple. Ava's code would be more clever than that. I forced myself to calm down, turning the poem and the symbol over and over in my mind. We're like seagulls. We fly over the sea. Wait. Fly over. I grabbed a pen and scribbled seagull and sea on a piece of scrap paper. Then, I traced the path of the word seagull as if it were flying over the word sea. I connected the letters in a single, flowing motion. A shaky but distinct S-shaped symbol appeared on the paper. That was it. I'd figure out the symbol. But what was the password? I looked at the poem again. To find each other. Find each other. I started typing the letters into the password field, following the S-shaped path I'd drawn. No, that was way too long. Sweat beaded on my forehead. Every second that passed felt like an eternity. Ava was in danger. Think, Ethan, you can figure this out? I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath. Ava's logic, her habits. She was an artist. She had a mind for numbers and structure. Seagulls. See. My eyes snapped open. Not letters. Numbers. A phone keypad. I immediately pictured the number pad on my phone. I converted the letters of seagull and C into their corresponding numbers. S equals 7, E equals 3, A equals 2. I calculated a complex string of digits. My fingers flew across the keyboard as I typed them into the password box and hit enter. The screen flickered. Password correct. Unzipping files. All the strength drained out of my body. I collapsed back into the chair, gasping for air. I'd done it. A folder opened. Inside, there was a single encrypted document and a set of GPS coordinates. I clicked on the coordinates first. The location was on the outskirts of the city, at a place marked as a derelict. MMA gym. An MMA gym? Ava, my sweet, gentle Ava, who struggled to lift a gallon of milk, what could she possibly have to do with a place like that? I didn't have time to process it. I opened the encrypted document. It wasn't a message. It was a single photograph. The background was the same MMA gym from the GPS location. And in the photo, there were two people. One was Ava. The other was a man I didn't recognize. His arm was draped casually over her shoulder, an intimate gesture. But it was Ava's expression that sent a chill down to my bones. She wasn't smiling. She stared into the camera with an expression I had never seen before. It was cold, sharp, and laced with a terrifying ruthlessness. She looked at the camera like she was looking at something already dead. This wasn't my Ava. Absolutely not. My wife, the girl who would secretly cry over stray cats, could never have eyes like that. It felt like a hand was wrapped around my throat, squeezing the air from my lungs. The woman in the photo had my wife's face, but she was a stranger who terrified me. Who was she? Who was my wife? I grabbed my car keys and bolted from the apartment without a second thought. I had to go to that gym. I had to find out what the hell was going on. The night was as black as ink. I floored it, racing towards the city limits. The GPS led me to a dilapidated two-story building. Most of the paint had peeled off the walls, and a sign for the Over the Limit Fight Club hung crookedly over the door, thick with dust. The place was completely deserted, the only sound the wind moaning through the ruins. I parked down the street, killed the engine, and crept towards the building. The front door was chained shut, but when I circled around back, I found a window with the glass shattered. I didn't hesitate. I climbed inside. The air was thick with the smell of mildew and old sweat, so strong it made me want to gag. Using my phone's flashlight, I saw scattered boxing gloves, punching bags, and faded posters of muscle-bound fighters on the walls. It looked exactly like the background in the photo. Ava had been here. I moved like a ghost through the wreckage, searching for more clues. Amid the chaos on the floor, something caught my eye. A shattered picture frame lay in the corner. I crouched down, carefully piecing the fragments together. It was the photo from the flash drive. But this time, Ava's face had been viciously scratched out with a sharp object. Next to it was a small slip of paper. Two words were scrawled in red ink. Traitor. A sharp pain lanced through my chest. Who did this? Was it the man from the photo? What was his relationship with Ava? Just then, I heard the sound of a car engine approaching. My heart leaped into my throat. I instantly switched off my flashlight and dove into a storage closet filled with old equipment, peeking through the crack in the door. Two blinding headlights swept across the building as a black SUV pulled up to the entrance. Two men in dark suits got out. They were big, with grim, serious faces. They didn't bother with the front door. Heading straight for the broken window, I just climbed through. One of them shone a high-powered flashlight inside. "This is the place," he said in a low voice. "Her last known location." The other man's voice was raspy. "Search carefully. The boss wants her found, dead or alive. The young miss isn't getting away this time. Young miss? My head was spinning. Were they talking about Ava? But she was an orphan. She told me her parents had died in an accident when she was little. A lie. Another lie. I huddled behind the door, my blood turning to ice. These men were armed, their tone menacing. They were here for Ava. Ava was in danger. That single thought bulldozed through all my confusion and anger. I couldn't let them find anything that might lead them to her. I scanned the tiny closet, looking for anything I could use. A pile of old weight plates, a rickety metal shelving unit, and directly above me, an exposed, rusty-looking fire sprinkler pipe. A crazy plan formed in my mind. In my past life, I was an architect. I knew buildings, structures, and pipes like the back of my hand. I held my breath, listening as the footsteps of the two men got closer. Nothing over here. Check the back rooms. They were coming right for me. It was now or never. With all the strength I could muster, I shoved the unstable metal shelf. Crash! The weight plates on the shelf cascaded to the ground with a deafening clang. The two men outside froze. Who's there? What was that? They immediately ran towards the source of the noise, the opposite direction from me. In that split second, I didn't run. I slipped out of the closet and melted into the shadows on the other side of the room. I watched them cautiously approach the pile of weights. After confirming no one was there, they relaxed. Damn it. Scared the crap out of me. Just a shelf falling over. This place is a real dump. They grumbled, getting ready to continue their search. But I wasn't going to give them a chance. I scooped up a loose bolt from the floor. Calculating the angle and the force, I hurled it at the valve joint of the ancient sprinkler pipe right above their heads. I was betting on years of neglect and decay. Ping! The bolt hit the weakest point perfectly. A split second later, a torrent of filthy water erupted from the cracked pipe, drenching both men in a disgusting waterfall. What the hell? Shit! The pipe burst. They were soaked and sputtering, and one of them dropped his flashlight. It fizzled on the wet floor and died, plunging the entire room into chaos and darkness. Go, go, go. Let's get out of here before we get electrocuted, one of them yelled. They scrambled back out the window, jumped in their SUV, and sped away. As the sound of their engine faded, I leaned against the wall, gasping for breath, my back soaked in cold sweat. I looked down at my hand, still trembling from the effort. What did I just do? I was an architect. I designed buildings, and I had just scared off two guys who looked like professional thugs. I looked down and saw something glinting in the puddle of water they'd left behind. I walked over and picked it up. A wallet. I opened it. Inside was a driver's license and a business card. The ID belonged to one of the thugs. But tucked into a hidden sleeve was the card. Vance Security Group, Julian Vance, Executive Director. The name on the card made my pupils shrink. The man in the photo with Ava. I memorized the name. I'd already memorized the license plate. Julian Vance. I don't care who you are. I don't care what you were to Ava. You touch my wife, and I'll make you pay with your life. The next day, I called in sick to work. I sat in front of my computer, my eyes bloodshot, frantically Googling everything I could find about Vance Security and Julian Vance. It was a massive private security firm. Their services range from mall cops to private bodyguards for the ultra-rich and even some gray area overseas operations. Julian Vance, as the executive director, was the company's second in command. There was very little about him online, just a few photos from business events. In them, he was handsome, charming, impeccably dressed, a world away from the man with the cold, predatory eyes in the shattered picture frame. The discrepancy only made my anxiety worse. A man who could build an empire like that, while keeping his own profile so clean, was not someone to be trifled with. I couldn't just sit back and wait. I had to go on the offensive. I spent the entire afternoon formulating a plan. Using the identity of a fictional corporate officer, I called the main line for Vance Security. Hello, I'd like to inquire about your private security services, I said, intentionally lowering my voice to sound older, more commanding. Of course, sir. What level of service are you interested in? I gave her a burner number. After hanging up, I looked at myself in the mirror. My face was pale and drawn, with dark circles under my eyes. But there was a look in them, a hard resolve I didn't recognize. Ethan, you're not just the guy who draws blueprints anymore. From now on, you're a hunter. The wait was agonizing. Finally, As evening fell, the burner phone rang. It was a young man's voice, identifying himself as Julian Vance's assistant. He scheduled a meeting for me tomorrow morning at 10 at the Vance security headquarters. I hung up, my heart pounding against my ribs. The fish had taken the bait. The next morning, I put on my most expensive suit, a pair of gold-rimmed glasses, and slicked my hair back. I stood in front of the mirror, practicing a look of detached arrogance. I was playing a part, a wealthy, powerful client who thought he was better than everyone else. The Vance security headquarters was a towering skyscraper of glass and steel, a monument to power. I walked into the lobby, gave my name, and was immediately escorted to a private elevator by a polite receptionist. The elevator shot straight to the top floor. As the doors opened, Julian's assistant was already waiting. "Mr. Walker, a pleasure. Mr. Vance is expecting you." I gave a curt nod and followed him into an office, so large it felt absurd. A floor-to-ceiling window offered a panoramic view of the entire city. A man stood with his back to me, looking out at the skyline. He turned. It was him, the man from the photograph. Handsome, dangerous, with a lazy smirk playing on his lips. Julian Vance. He wore a perfectly tailored charcoal suit, no tie, with the top two buttons of his shirt undone, giving him an air of reckless confidence. "Mr. Walker, I've been looking forward to this," he said, striding toward me, his hand outstretched. I shook it. His grip was firm and dry, and I felt the hard callus on the side of his palm. "Mr. Vance," I said, my voice flat. We sat on a leather sofa as his assistant served coffee. "So, what kind of services can I offer you?" Julian asked, leaning forward slightly, his sharp eyes sizing me up as if calculating my net worth. He was testing me. I picked up the coffee cup but didn't drink. "I don't need to browse," I said. "I need you to find someone for me." Julian raised an eyebrow. "Find someone?" "Mr. Walker, we're a security firm, not a detective agency." "I'm aware," I said, meeting his gaze directly. "But the person I'm looking for might be difficult to find. And once you do find her, I need you to protect her, to make sure she never leaves my side again." I put a special emphasis on the word protect. Julian's smile widened, a cruel understanding dawning in his eyes. "I see," he said, leaning back. "This does fall within our area of expertise. And who is this lady? Who has Mr. Walker so concerned?" Here it comes. The moment of truth. I set my cup down, the porcelain making a sharp clink against the glass table. I looked him dead in the eye and said, enunciating every syllable, "Her name is Ava." The moment the name left my lips, I saw it. An infinitesimal, almost imperceptible tightening of his pupils. His playful smirk froze for a split second before snapping back into place. But he wasn't fast enough. I saw the shock and the flash of raw fury that followed it, deep in his eyes. "Ava." He repeated the name slowly, as if savoring it. "A beautiful name. Do you have a photo? Any information will be helpful for my team to begin their work." He was playing dumb. He knew exactly who Ava was. He might even know where she was right now. He was toying with me. A hot rage flared in my chest, but I forced it down. I pulled a photo from my jacket pocket. It was a selfie of Ava and me, taken last summer. We were both smiling, happy, and carefree. I slid it across the table to him. "This is her, my wife." Julian picked up a photo. His thumb stroked over Ava's face, and his expression turned dark and complicated. He looked up at me and smiled. It was a smile full of mockery and pity. "Mr. Walker, you are." He drew out the words, shaking his head slightly. "A very interesting man." He stood up, walked over, and leaned down close to my ear. His voice was a low whisper, meant only for me. "Some things aren't meant for you. You shouldn't get greedy. People who do tend to get crushed." His voice was soft, but it felt like a snake's tongue flicking against my skin, cold and poisonous. My hands clenched into fists, my nails digging into my palms. He was threatening me. I looked up, meeting his gaze, and smiled back. "Mr. Vance, greedy isn't in my vocabulary. Everything that's mine, I'll take back myself, and I won't leave anything behind." Leaving the Vance security building, I realized the back of my shirt was soaked through with sweat. It wasn't from fear. It was from pure, unadulterated rage. Julian's reaction confirmed everything. He didn't just know Ava. Their history was clearly volatile. And now, He was suspicious of me. I drove aimlessly through the city streets, my mind a chaotic mess. What was my next move? I couldn't take him on directly. I had no proof to go to the police. Ava was an adult, and her disappearance wouldn't even qualify as a missing persons case yet. I felt like a fly caught in a spider's web. The more I struggled, the more entangled I became. Then my burner phone rang. A strange number. I hesitated for a second, then answered. Mr. Walker. It was a polite, familiar voice. Julian's assistant. Yes. Mr. Vance would like to invite you to dinner. An apology for not being a more gracious host earlier today. A cold laugh escaped my lips. An apology? More like an ambush. No, thank you. I'm busy, I said flatly. Mr. Walker, he is very sincere, the assistant said, his tone still polite, but now underscored with a hard edge. A car is already waiting for you outside your office. Our boss doesn't like to be kept waiting. My heart sank. They knew where I worked. They've been digging into me. I'm not at my office. We know, the assistant chuckled. You're in a black Passat. License plate. Shall I read it to you? I slammed on the brakes, pulling the car over to the side of the road. In my rearview mirror, a black SUV that had been tailing me came to a stop a short distance behind. It was the same one from the gym. I was being followed. What do they want? What the hell do you people want? I snarled, my voice trembling with rage. Just dinner, Mr. Walker. Don't be nervous. The line went dead. The black SUV pulled up alongside me, then swerved in front, blocking my path. Two big guys in suits got out and tapped on my window. I took a deep breath and opened the door. There was no running. I was escorted into the back of the SUV, and my phone was taken from me. The vehicle sped off, heading toward an increasingly deserted part of the city. My stomach twisted into a knot. The silence in the car was deafening, broken only by the sound of my own ragged breathing. I told myself to stay calm, to think, but in the face of brute force, my plans felt pathetic and useless. The SUV finally stopped in front of a derelict warehouse at the docks. I was shoved out of the car and marched inside. The warehouse was cavernous and empty, lit by a few dim, hanging bulbs. Julian Vance sat in a lone chair in the center of the space, idly flipping a butterfly knife in his hand. The blade flashed in the dim light. Mr. Walker, we meet again, he said with a smile. What do you want? I demanded, staring him down. Nothing much, he said, getting to his feet and walking toward me. Just a chat. About my fiancée, Ava. The word fiancée hit me like a sledgehammer. She's not your fiancée. She's my wife. I roared. Is she? Julian's smile vanished, replaced by a cold sneer. Not for long. He kicked out, his foot connecting sharply with the back of my knee. I buckled, crashing down onto the concrete on one knee. Pain shot at my leg, but I bit my tongue and refused to make a sound. An architect thinks he can steal my woman? He snarled, grabbing a fistful of my hair and yanking my head back. Are you even worthy? His face was inches from mine, his eyes blazing with a violent madness that chilled me to the bone. Let me tell you something. Ava is mine. She has been mine since the day she was born. You're just a hiding place she found while she was on the run. And now that she's bored, she's thrown you away. Every word was a knife, twisting in my gut. I didn't believe him. I couldn't believe Ava would do that to me. You're full of shit. I screamed, spitting the words at him. Julian's expression turned utterly savage. It seems you still don't understand your situation. He nodded to one of his thugs. The man advanced on me, a sadistic grin on his face, a steel pipe in his hand. This is it. I closed my eyes, and then, bang! The massive warehouse door was kicked open from the outside, shattering the lock. A pair of blindingly bright headlights flooded the space, forcing everyone to shield their eyes. A red sports car, roaring like an angry beast, smashed through a pile of junk blocking the entrance, executed a perfect drift, and screeched to a halt in the center of the warehouse. The driver's side door swung open. A woman in a tight, black leather jumpsuit emerged. Her figure was sleek and powerful. She was silhouetted against the headlights, and I couldn't see her face. But I knew that silhouette. I knew it in my bones. It was Ava. She was here. She had actually come. Julian was stunned, squinting at the figure, his face a mask of disbelief. Ava. Ava ignored him. Her gaze was locked on the thug with the steel pipe who was about to bring it down on me. In the next second, she moved, She was a black blur, a flash of lightning. All I saw was a flicker of motion, and then the 6'4" goon, who hadn't even had time to react, was hit with a brutal elbow strike to the side of his neck. Crack! A sickening crunch of bone. The thug crumpled to the ground like a marionette with its strings cut. The entire warehouse fell dead silent. Everyone was stunned. Ava slowly straightened up, shaking out her hand. Then, she turned her head and looked at me. Her face, the face I had been dreaming of for days, was now an icy mask of controlled fury. She saw me kneeling on the ground, and her brow furrowed, her eyes flashing with a complex emotion I couldn't decipher. There was pain, anger, and a steely resolve. Who told you that you could touch him? Ava's voice was like ice, devoid of any warmth. She stared at Julian, the murderous intent in her eyes so palpable it was practically visible. Julian snapped out of shock. He looked at this new, dangerous version of Ava, and instead of fear, he began to laugh, a sick, unhinged sound. Ha ha, Ava, you finally decided to show yourself. For this piece of trash, you were willing to blow your cover? I should probably thank him. He clapped his hands, and from the shadows around the warehouse, 7 or 8 more thugs emerged, surrounding us. Did you really think you could just walk out of here? Julian's eyes gleamed, like a predator cornering its prey. Ava didn't even glance at the other men. She walked straight to me. She crouched down, her hand reaching out as if to help me up, but she stopped just before she touched me. Her hand was trembling. "Does it hurt?" she asked, her voice laced with a raw, almost imperceptible tremor. I shook my head, staring at her face, so close to mine. 1,000 questions were screaming in my mind. Where had she been? Who was she? Was what Julian said true? But when I opened my mouth, only 3 words came out. You came back. Ava's body stiffened. She looked away, then stood up, positioning herself in front of me, a human shield. This doesn't concern you anymore, she said, her back to me, her voice once again cold and distant. Leave now. Go. Go home. And wait for me. Home. Did we even have a home anymore? My home, my wife, had become a lie I no longer recognized. Ava. I pushed myself up, my knees screaming in protest. When were you going to stop lying to me? Who are you? My question hung in the air, a spear that pierced through her armor. Her shoulders trembled slightly. Julian watched us from the side, enjoying the show. He's asking you a question, Ava. Why don't you tell him? He taunted. Tell him you're the heiress to the sterling fortune. Tell him you're my fiancée, arranged since we were children. Tell him the only reason you ever got with him was to hide from me. Shut up. Ava whipped her head around, her voice a raw, desperate roar. My heart shattered. So it was true. All of it. The happy marriage I thought I had was just an elaborate charade. I was just a tool she used to escape from another man. A tidal wave of humiliation and betrayal washed over me. So that's it then? I looked at Ava's back, my voice hoarse with disappointment. All the affection, all the love. It was all an act. Our marriage was just a joke. Ava's body shook violently. She didn't turn around. She didn't answer. Her silence was the only answer I needed. I laughed, a broken, ugly sound. I guess I really was the biggest fool. My chest ached with a pain so sharp it felt like 1,000 needles were stabbing me from the inside. Fina. That's fine. I nodded, taking a step back, and then another. Ava, I guess I was blind. I turned my back on her and on our life together. Dragging my injured leg, I started limping toward the warehouse exit. Every step was agony. Stop. Ava's voice, laced with panic, came from behind me. I didn't stop. Ethan, I said stop. She tried to come after me, but Julian's men blocked her path. Leaving so soon? I don't think so, Julian sneered, waving a hand. Grab him too. 2 of his men charged at me. I didn't fight back. I didn't even turn around. My heart was dead. Nothing mattered anymore. But the blow I was expecting never came. I heard 2 dull thuds behind me, followed by Ava's ragged breathing. I couldn't help it. I looked back. Ava was fighting like a cornered lioness, taking on all of them at once. Her movements were a blur of deadly efficiency, fast, precise, and brutal. She was no longer the woman who couldn't open a jar. She was a warrior fighting to protect me. My heart lurched. If everything was a lie, then what was this? This desperate, reckless battle? In the second I was distracted, Julian made his move. He didn't join the fight. He skirted the brawl and shot towards me like an arrow. His target was me. "Ethan, watch out!" Ava screamed. She tried to get to me, but two men were holding her back. I saw Julian's snarling face rushing toward me, his fist, a blur of motion, aimed straight for my temple. There was no way to dodge. At the last possible second, instinct took over. I threw myself backward, raising my arm to shield my head. Julian's fist grazed my forearm and slammed into the corrugated metal wall behind me. Boom! The wall dented inward with a deafening crash. A cold sweat broke out all over my body. If that punch had landed, it would have killed me. Julian was clearly surprised I'd managed to avoid it. His surprise quickly morphed into a deeper rage. He followed up with a vicious chop aimed at my neck. This time, I was ready. I wasn't a fighter, but as an architect, I had an intuitive understanding of space, angles, and leverage. Using the momentum from leaning back, I dropped and rolled, clumsily scrambling a few feet away. "You dare to dodge?" Julian's voice was a low growl, his eyes fixed on me like a cat watching a mouse. Across the warehouse, Ava had taken down 3 more men, but she was hurt. A long gash was bleeding freely on her arm. Seeing me in danger, she redoubled her efforts, fighting with a mad desperation to break free. "Ava!" Julian suddenly shouted. "Move another inch, and I'll break his leg." Ava froze. She stood panting, her eyes filled with a helpless rage. "Julian, you want me, you deal with me," she said, her voice hoarse. "Let him go. I'll go with you." Hearing those words felt like a physical blow. Julian, however, smiled, a triumphant, possessive grin. "See? That wasn't so hard." He walked slowly toward Ava, his eyes devouring her. "Come home. Be my good little bride, and I can forget any of this ever happened, including your pet project over there." He flicked his gaze in my direction, his expression dripping with contempt. Ava bit her lip so hard I was afraid she'd draw blood. She looked at me, her eyes a storm of pain and conflict. Then slowly she nodded. "Fine." That one word shattered the last piece of hope in my chest. "But you let him walk out of here. Safely. Right now," she said, her voice steely. Julian laughed. "Of course." He jerked his chin at me. "You can go. And remember, stay away from her. She's out of your league." I stood there, frozen. My legs felt like they were encased in lead. Leave? Go where? Watch my wife sacrifice herself to another man to save me, and I just run away like a coward? No, I couldn't do it. A defiant, primal energy I never knew I possessed surged through me. I looked at Ava's pale face, at the blood on her arm, at the despair she was trying so hard to hide. And suddenly I understood. She wasn't pushing me away because she didn't love me. She was doing it because she loved me. This was her twisted, desperate way of protecting me. And I, like an idiot, had just thrown it all back in her face. I was a fool. I slowly lifted my head, meeting Julian's smug gaze. "What if I don't leave?" I asked. My voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the silence of the warehouse. Everyone froze. Julian looked at me, as if I'd just told the world's dumbest joke. "What did you say?" Ava's eyes widened in panic. "Ethan, are you crazy? Go." I ignored them both, keeping my eyes locked on Julian. I repeated myself. I said, "What if I don't leave?" I straightened my back. "She's my wife. Our marriage certificate has my name on it. Ethan Walker. You want to take her? You'll have to go through me." The silence that followed was absolute. Everyone was staring at me, their faces a mixture of shock and disbelief. Ava stared, her eyes instantly welling up with tears. Her lips trembled, but no words came out. The smile on Julian's face slowly curdled, replaced by the incandescent rage of a king being challenged by a peasant. Well, he said, a slow, menacing applause echoing in the vast space. "How touching. You want to die that badly? I'm happy to oblige." He lunged at me like a panther. This time I didn't move. I knew I couldn't dodge. I just stared him down, my body tense for the inevitable impact. But a black shadow moved faster. It was Ava. She threw herself in front of me, a desperate, last-second shield. She spread her arms, turning her slender back to Julian's oncoming fist. "No!" The word ripped from my throat. Thud! A sickening, dull impact. Ava's body shuddered violently, and a pained grunt escaped her lips. She went limp, falling back into my arms. I caught her, holding her tight, feeling the tremors racking her body. Why? Why didn't you leave? She whispered, her voice weak and choked with tears. You idiot. You big idiot. A trickle of blood seeped from the corner of her mouth. Seeing that splash of red against her pale skin, my world shattered. Aya! A raw, animalistic roar tore from deep inside my chest. My vision went red. I gently eased Ava against the wall, then launched myself at Julian like a charging bull. I had no technique, no skill. Only one thought consumed me. Kill him. I slammed my head into him. I tried to bite. I used every primal savage instinct I had. Julian was caught off guard by my sudden feral attack and stumbled, and I managed to tackle him to the ground. I straddled his chest and rained down punches, one after another, onto his face. I'll kill you. I'll kill you. I felt nothing. Not the pain in my own knuckles, not his fists hitting back. My world had narrowed to a single point of furious, murderous intent. His thugs finally reacted, rushing over to pull me off. But in that moment, I was a beast running on pure adrenaline, and it took 3 of them to haul me off him. Get off me, you useless bastards. Julian screamed, shoving them away. He landed a solid knee strike into my stomach. The force sent me flying backward. I hit the ground hard, the taste of blood filling my mouth. Julian staggered to his feet, wiping the blood from his split lip. His eyes were pure murder. An architect dares to raise his hands to me. He stalked toward me, each footstep a hammer blow against my heart. Today, I'm going to teach you the meaning of despair. He ripped a knife from a sheath on one of his men's belts. The cold steel blade gleamed in the dim light. Ethan, Ava screamed. I watched the knife get closer, but a strange calm washed over me. To die with Ava, maybe it wasn't so bad. Just as Julian raised the knife to strike. Stop! A powerful, authoritative voice boomed from the warehouse entrance. A dozen bright flashlight beams stabbed into the darkness, followed by a group of grim-faced men in sharp, dark suits. Leading them was an older man with silver hair, who carried himself with an air of immense dignity. His eyes swept over the scene, and when he saw the injured Ava, his face turned to stone. Julian Vance, the old man's voice cracked like a whip. You have some nerve. Seeing the old man, Julian froze, the knife hovering in midair. The arrogant fury on his face evaporated, replaced by shock. C.H. Charles. He stammered. What are you doing here? The man called Charles ignored him completely, rushing to Ava's side, his face etched with worry. Miss Sterling, I am so sorry. Ava looked at him, her expression complicated, and just gave a weak shake of her head. Charles stood and turned back to Julian, his eyes as sharp as daggers. Seize this degenerate, he commanded. His men moved instantly, grabbing a still-stunned Julian and forcing his arms behind his back. Charles, you can't do this to me. I'm a Vance. My father. Silence. Charles cut him off coldly. As of today, the alliance between the Sterling and Vance families is terminated. And as for you, he paused, his voice dropping to a deadly low register. You will pay the price for harming the young miss. Take him away. Julian was dragged out, his eyes, full of venom, locked on me and Ava. Finally, the warehouse was quiet. Charles walked over to me, studying my face. You must be Mr. Ethan Walker. I nodded. Miss Sterling was willing to break with her own family for you, he said with a heavy sigh. She's a good and loyal woman. I hope you will not fail her. With that, he turned to direct his men. I didn't care about any of that. I stumbled over to Ava and gathered her into my arms, holding her as if my life depended on it. I am sorry. I'm so sorry. I repeated over and over, tears streaming down my face. I was too weak. If I had been stronger, she wouldn't have had to suffer like this. Ava leaned against me, managing a weak smile. She lifted a trembling hand and gently wiped away my tears. Idiot, what are you crying for? She whispered. I came back, didn't I? And with that, her eyes fluttered shut and she passed out in my arms. The sterile, antiseptic smell of the hospital was cold and overwhelming. I stood outside the emergency room doors, a statue carved from anxiety. Every tick of the clock was an eternity. Charles stood beside me, holding out a bottle of water. "Mr. Walker, you should drink something." I didn't take it. My eyes were glued to the closed doors. He sighed and began to speak. From his fragmented story, I finally pieced together the truth of Ava's past. Her real name was Ava Sterling, the sole heiress to the Sterling family, one of the country's wealthiest and most private dynasties. Their power was immense, but it had also made them enemies. The Vance family, once a subsidiary of the Sterling Empire, had grown ambitious, plotting to absorb the Sterling's assets through a strategic marriage to Ava. Ava had despised Julian's obsessive, violent nature since they were children and refused to be a pawn in a corporate merger. So, 2 years ago, she had faked her own death in an accident and vanished completely. She changed her name, moved to this city, and tried to live a normal life. And then, she met me. "The young miss told me that meeting you was the best thing that ever happened to her," Charles said, his gaze heavy. "She said that only with you did she feel like a real person, not a name or a tool to be used. She wanted to live like that forever, but Julian finally found her. To keep you out of it, she tried to cut all ties and handle him alone. She never expected." My heart felt like it was being crushed in a vice. She had given up everything for me. My quiet, peaceful life was a gift she had purchased with her own freedom and safety. And I had doubted her, accused her. I was a bastard. The ER doors finally swung open. A doctor emerged, pulling down his mask. "She's out of danger. Mostly bruises and a mild concussion. We'll need to keep her for observation for a few days." The world, which had been tilting on its axis, finally settled. The strength drained from my legs, and I nearly collapsed. Ava was moved to a private room. I sat by her bedside, holding her cool hand, watching her sleep. Her face was pale as a sheet, her skin marred by bruises. "All for me." I lower my head, pressing her hand against my cheek. "Ava, I'm sorry. From now on, I'll protect you." I didn't know if she could hear me, but it was a promise to her and to myself. The man who just drew blueprints was gone. For her, I would become a monster. The next day, I called Leo. I transferred my entire life savings to his account. By stock in Van Security, I told him, "Ethan, are you insane?" Leo yelled through the phone. "Van Security is a train wreck. Julian got arrested. The stock is in free fall. You're just throwing your money away. Just do it. Buy everything you can," I said, my tone leaving no room for argument. "And I need you to start a rumor. Spread it everywhere, as fast as you can. Tell them the Sterling family is about to invest." Leo was baffled, but he agreed. I hung up and looked out the window. "You wanted to play, Julian? Let's play." I was going to make him watch as the empire he was so proud of crumbled and fell into my hands. I was going to leave him with nothing. For the next few days, I split my time between the hospital and my laptop, obsessively watching the market. As I predicted, the rumor of a Sterling investment caused the cratering Vance Security stock to bounce. Small-time investors, thinking they'd stumbled upon the deal of a lifetime, started buying in a frenzy. Meanwhile, with Leo's help, I used my savings as leverage to quietly buy up all the cheap shares being panic sold. It was an insane gamble. If the Sterling family issued a denial, I'd be ruined. But I was betting they wouldn't. Charles had said Ava was willing to defy her family for me. To win her back, her family would have to make a gesture. At the very least, they would stand aside and let me destroy Julian Vance. Ava woke up on the third day. She opened her eyes and saw me passed out in the chair by her bed. She just stared at me for a long moment. "Ethan," she whispered, her voice raspy. I jolted awake. "You're awake. How do you feel? Does anything hurt?" I fumbled for the nurse's call button. She didn't answer, just watched me, her eyes slowly filling with tears. "I'm sorry," she said. "I'm the one who should be sorry," I said, taking her hand. "I never should have doubted you." "It's over now," Ava whispered, squeezing my hand back. "Ethan, let's leave. Let's go somewhere no one can ever find us and start over." Her eyes were full of a deep, weary fear. I gently stroked her cheek. "Okay," I said, "but not yet. Let me finish one more thing. Then we'll go. I promise, no one will ever tear us apart again." My voice was firm, resolute. Ava saw something new in my eyes, something she hadn't seen before. She didn't argue. She just nodded. A week later, Ava was discharged from the hospital, and I had completed my takeover. I was now the single largest shareholder in Vance Security, outside of the Vance family itself. But it wasn't enough. I wanted all of it. I called a meeting with the smaller shareholders who had been burned in the crash. I showed them my holdings and laid out my plan. Call an emergency board meeting, oust Julian's father as chairman, and restructure the entire company. It was a corporate coup. At first, they thought I was crazy. But when I promised to use my own money to cover all their losses if they backed me, they started to listen. In the world of high finance, loyalty is cheap. On the day of the board meeting, I walked into the Vance security conference room alone. Julian's father, Marcus Vance, a shrewd man in his 60s, sat at the head of the table, his eyes like chips of ice. "So, you're Ethan Walker?" "I am." I pulled out the chair directly opposite him and sat down. "Don't get ahead of yourself, son," Marcus said, tapping the table. "Some things are too big for you to swallow." I smiled. "Your son said something very similar to me." I slid a folder across the table. "These are my shares, along with proxies from every shareholder who supports me. And our first order of business is a vote to remove you as chairman." "You?" Marcus's face went white as he stared at the documents. He never imagined I could move so fast, that I could rally enough support to shatter his foundation. The vote was a formality. Ethan Walker, an architect who a week ago was nobody, was now the new head of Vance Security. When I walked out of the conference room, the first thing I did was drive to the county jail to visit Julian. Through the thick glass partition, I looked at him. He wore a standard-issue orange jumpsuit. His head was shaved, and the bruises on his face were still healing. All the arrogance was gone, replaced by a hollowed-out despair. His eyes, when he saw me, filled with a confused, venomous hatred. "It was you. You did this." He rasped into the phone receiver. I picked up my own receiver and smiled. "That's right. I told you. Everything that's mine, I take back. Your company? It's mine now." "Oh, and by the way," I said, watching his face twist in rage, "Ava's pregnant. It's my child." "You." Julian leaped to his feet, slamming his body against the glass, roaring like a caged animal. I looked at him, my expression cold, and hung up the phone. I turned and walked away. The game was over. He had lost everything. When I got home, Ava was sitting in the rocking chair on the balcony, a blanket draped over her lap, quietly watching the sunset. The golden light bathed her in a soft glow. It was a perfect, peaceful moment. I walked up behind her and wrapped my arms around her. "I'm home." She turned her head and smiled at me. "Is it all taken care of?" "Yeah." I rested my chin on her shoulder. "It's all over." We stood there in silence for a long time, just holding each other, watching the sun dip below the horizon. Finally, Ava spoke, her voice soft. "Ethan, do you hate me for lying to you?" I shook my head, tightening my embrace. "Maybe for a minute," I admitted, "but not anymore. I just hate that I wasn't strong enough to protect you, that you had to go through so much. Without me, she might still be living that dangerous life on the run. But without her, I never would have known I could be so brave, so reckless for someone I loved. We had saved each other." "So," Ava hesitated, "what are you going to do with the company?" I smiled, leaning in to whisper in her ear. "I sold it." Ava froze. "You sold it?" "Yep, sold it," I confirmed. "Already found a buyer. Got a pretty good price, too." "But then what was the point of all that?" "It wasn't for nothing," I said, moving around to crouch in front of her. I took her hands in mine. "The point was to send a message, that nobody gets to mess with my wife. Now that the message has been sent, it's served its purpose. I'm still just Ethan, the guy who draws buildings. And you're still Ava, the girl who loves to sleep in. We'll donate the money, and then, just like you wanted, we'll find a little town where nobody knows us. We'll buy a small house, get a dog, and have a—" My eyes drifted down to her still flat stomach. Ava's face flushed a brilliant shade of red. She playfully slapped my arm. You knew." "Yep, Julian told me." "What?" she asked, completely bewildered. I burst out laughing. "I am kidding. I just guessed." I watched her, my heart swelling with a love so profound it almost hurt. "Ava, will you marry me again?" I pulled a small velvet box from my pocket. It didn't contain some massive diamond. It was a simple, plain platinum band, exactly like the one we had before. This time, no lies, no secrets. "Ava Sterling, will you marry Ethan Walker, a man who has nothing to offer you but his entire heart?" Tears streamed down Ava's face, silent and steady. She didn't speak. She just cried and nodded, over and over. I smiled and slid the ring onto her finger. Then I leaned in and kissed her. Outside, the city lights began to twinkle on against the darkening sky. Our real life, the one we chose together, was just beginning. And